Hey, it's Mary. I just wanted to hop on real quick before we get started to let you know that this episode of the Show Up season is being brought to you by our friends at Tonic. That's tonicsiteshop.com, which is the only design company I use. I use them for all my websites, my quiz, my freebie templates, even my Instagram designs. And I wanted to let you know that these guys are doing something extra fun this month, which they are calling Launch Camp. It is a 3-day long virtual camp happening on March 24th, 25th, and 26th, where they are bringing in experts from all over to tell you what's really working right now with getting more eyes on your website, including experts on design, SEO, copywriting, even list building, launch strategy, and more. The team at Tonic are truly some of the smartest entrepreneurs in general and marketers in particular that I've ever seen, and they are doing the heavy lifting for us to figure out what's really moving the needle right now and what is so 2025 and not really working anymore. And they're breaking down all of it in this incredible 3-day camp that is on sale starting right now. You can use the code Mary Sent Me, all one word, Mary Sent Me, to get an even bigger discount off your seat. We've linked it all up in the show notes, and trust me, you do not want to miss this, friends. We will see you there. Now, on with our show.
And so I felt like I was showing up, I was doing the work, but I wasn't showing up as my full self or even a healthy version of myself. I was showing up as like a really stressed out, burnout, overwhelmed kind of shell of myself that in many ways had become like difficult. Like,
Yeah.
it's like, ooh, like eggshells, like Jeff's kind of on edge, man. And that just started to, I started to see that like impact of that. And I was like, okay, this is not the impact I want to be having.
Hey friends, and welcome back to the Show Up season of the Mary Marantz Show, a season all about how we never asked you to be perfect. We just asked you to show up. And today I am so excited to sit down with my longtime friend, fellow creative entrepreneur, photography conference partner in crime, spontaneous ballroom dance partner, and one of the only true tastemakers I have actually ever known in my real actual life. One half of the duo that is the powerhouse design firm slash juggernaut that is Tonic of tonicsiteshop.com fame that I'm always talking about. This is my incredible pleasure to introduce you to Mr. Jeff Shipley as we talk all about continuing to show up for yourself and your business in very hard seasons. Jeffrey, Jeff, DJ Jazzy Jeff, welcome to the Mary Marantz Show.
Oh my gosh, Mary, it's so good to be here. I was thinking in the shower, as often we do as entrepreneurs. I was like,
Yes.
this is a little bit like an Oprah moment for me, like getting to go on the Mary Marantz Show. Like you are the Oprah to me, and so I'm so
Oh,
excited
God.
to be
Well,
here.
let's just end the episode
That's
right
just in that.
there.
That's the little soundbite.
That's the sizzle.
But
We're done.
and I love the throwback. I mean, we go back
Oh,
a long
long time.
time.
I think it was a Spread the Love tour in stop in Santa Barbara,
It was. I was
like
thinking about
2009
this
or
too.
something.
Yeah.
Woo!
And yeah, I was like fresh out of college and starting my photography business. And so it's fun to think back on how, yeah, like how many iterations of ourselves and our businesses that we've seen
Right.
in this kind of like we see each other at conferences or on the internet kind of thing. So it's fun
Yeah.
to see what that's looked like for both of us.
I was just thinking to myself, this could make for a very cool book of like you said, it's like we sort of benchmark. We become like mile markers in each other's lives when we see each other at things like this or at conferences, and then there's all this stuff that happens in between. I feel like that's like I don't know,
There's
at least a
something
good
there.
read. I love it. I love it. Okay, so I've literally wanted to get you on the show forever. I said this when we were voice messaging back and forth. Like
Yeah.
your name has come up over and over and over again, and then the way this sort of all unfolded that we are getting to steal an hour of your time is that you saw a clip of me talking about how this was in particular the show up season, and there was
Hmm.
something about that phrase or that idea that really resonated with you, and so just kind of to get everybody listening at home caught up. maybe even just give us the Cliff's Notes version to begin with of like, what was it about showing up that really was like, oh, yes, like I have something to say
Mm.
about that?
Yeah. Well, I think the well, it's a couple things. I think one, I knew that like the style of your show and just of a lot of your work is very conversational and often shows or sort of brings into focus the process and the kind of the messy middle, the parts that don't really make sense. And so when I saw you kind of announce the theme for this season, I immediately had this thought of like, man, that is something I have been trying to figure out how to do, and how to do when there's a lot of stakeholders involved, and when you have a team, and when you have a business, and when you have a business partner and a life partner, like what does that all look like? And so I was like, I have like an interesting journey with showing up that feels like really current, and it's just like something that I was interested in like talking to you about. And I remember I even said, I was like, I'm not like coming here with like all of these answers and like this is what you do to show up when things
Yeah.
are hard.
1, 2, 3, 4, done.
And
Yeah.
yeah, this is
Right.
the step, and like, here you go. But I do have like some things that I have learned and that have helped me
Yeah.
show up to both myself and what I kind of refer to as like the work, which
Yeah.
feels like something that like I struggle with as like an artist, but then also as a business owner. Like, what is the work? Like
Mhm.
the big
Yeah.
W and maybe the little W of it,
Right. Right. Well, I think right off the bat, something that's really interesting is I think a lot of people would be shocked. Like if we were at a photography conference right now and somebody overheard this conversation, I think they would be shocked to think of Jeff Shipley as like somebody who doesn't know how to show up because you
Mm,
are, both in your own photography brand and just your own presence at the conferences, but also like tied to such a visual brand that is so beloved and so, successful and so it's like part of the culture. I feel like, it's like infused into
the
everything.
zeitgeist, that's where
Yes,
we
that's
are.
the word I was looking for. Thank you. I was like, "Oh, it's right there." Yes, exactly, the zeitgeist. And so I think people would be shocked, and that's why I love having these conversations, that
Mm,
you would even be someone that it would even cross your mind to struggle with what it means to show up. And so I love that we're just gonna get to pull back the curtain, and so let's really just kinda jump in to it's a couple years ago, things are starting to get, like, heavy, burnout is looming, it's feeling like, "Ooh, the early warning bells are going off,"
mhm,
and your first reaction is what so many of us who are entrepreneurs or we have a lot of people counting on us do, which is, "Okay, I need to double down and white knuckle and
mhm.
push harder." So just kind of walk us through that first phase of a response to the burnout, and then when that didn't work, where you landed.
Yeah, yeah. I think I love these like full circle moments that just happen in life, and I think that as I look back on my career, both as a photographer, starting out as a photographer, and then switching to a designer, and then launching Tonic Site Shop with Jen, I realized that kind of my MO is I've been thinking, through lots of therapy, I've been realizing how much of this has been just how I am and how I kind of grew up and how I showed up um, to any sort of work that was tied to productivity or to accomplishment or accolades. It's like, okay, I got to get the 4.0 and I got to get the this and the that and get into college and do all this stuff. And I think once I started building a business, and in particular when Tonic became something that had more mouths to feed than just my own, I was like, oh, I just gotta like, yeah, like you said, like double down and
Yeah.
keep like showing up at beyond 100%. Sometimes that was just like to the point of just working all the time or working instead of anything else. And I think, like, I don't know how your COVID time was, but that's what I did. Like there was something like we just worked, And that
Mm.
was such a blessing to be able to have something that could continue from home. But like, that's all I did. So as I even kind of worked through different hard seasons in my business, I found that whenever I would get anxious, whenever I would get worried about the future or anything, I would just double down and work. And so that's kind of, and the problem, I guess the problem with it all, or the challenge, is that I really like it. In fact, I love
Yeah.
it. So
Right.
it's not like a grind all the time, and it feels really fun and interesting. And then I really like something shifts and I'm like, wait a minute, like I think I've been, burning the candle at both ends, even though it's like something I enjoy.
Yeah, I wanna kinda even camp there before we move forward too much. This get the gold star, get the A plus,
Hmm.
this kind of
I love a gold
drive.
star.
Me too.
Give me a
So
gold
much.
star, Mary Marantz.
Gold star,
You're
gold star,
making me
gold star.
blush.
I love it. Where do you think that first showed up for you? We spend a lot of time on this show
Mm,
unpacking, like, why are we the way we are?
yeah.
And I know that for me, it was because achievement equaled love. Achievement equaled any kind of praise, any kind of, you did okay for today kind of thing. And so, what do you think that was for you? Like, when did that first start?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely started young, and I've talked about this with my parents even recently, of how I've kind of been like, so, in therapy, there's a lot of like looking at your childhood, and, there's a childhood trauma, and there's these, you're
Yeah.
looking at the things that, made you how you are. And so I'm kind of been sniffing around that. And I keep coming to this conclusion that like my parents were pretty seemingly like chill about it. Like, do what you want, like, um, just enjoy it. And I do remember like, I was teasing my mom about this over Christmas. Like, there was definitely the like work first and play mentality in like Saturday mornings. Like, we had to do our chores and then we got to watch cartoons.
Interesting.
And so I think there was always that like prioritization of like, do your responsible thing and then you get to play. And yeah, so there was that. But I think a lot of it had to do with like me wanting to, I think, show up to anything I was doing perfectly. Because then I would, similar to what you were saying, I would be then showered with the praise, the love, the acceptance. And I think for me, it ultimately, like, my doings, my accomplishments were the thing that helped me feel seen, and that I was often like seen for, both in my
Yeah.
family and in, you know, the school. And it's like the teachers were like, oh, that was such a great presentation. And so anytime that somebody saw me for like me, and there were teachers who were like, I see this thing in you, and like, yeah, maybe you're struggling with like testing, because you get anxiety, which I didn't know at the time, but you're like really a really great writer, or you really
Yeah.
understand this, we just need to change the environment. So when there were people who are like, wait, I see you, that's when I would really respond, more authentically, versus being like, oh, I need to like get the gold star, or and a lot of it had to do with like pleasing my own standards, which were extraordinarily high and still are. And that's something I've
Yes.
had to really wrestle with even in the
Yeah.
last couple years.
Which is both a blessing and a curse, right? Like, your extremely high level of excellence is what creates designs like Tonic has, and
Mm-hmm.
a business like Tonic is, and a career like you've had in photography before that, and we gosh, we just know how to fire that up, don't we? We're like,
Mm-hmm.
I talk about, like, the girl in the red cape being chased by the wolf, and eventually she learns how to twist the thorn in the paw 'cause she needs to be chased if she's gonna run fast. Okay, so, like, a bit of a, like, good kid syndrome was probably at play there, and
Yes.
then, interestingly, this
So well put.
needing to oh, believe me, I get
Yeah.
it, believe me, I get it. This need to it's like there's this really interesting thing that's happening of, like, we show up in order to be seen, but it's like ironically not really fully showing up as
Mhm.
ourselves because our real full selves also have needs and like need breaks and need rest. So we're showing up to be
Mhm.
seen, but we're not really be seen as our real selves. There's something happening in a word play cyclical thing that's really interesting there that maybe will make more sense as we go. Maybe I'll
Yeah.
stumble upon it real sharp
Maybe.
there as we go. But okay, so a question I have for you is when you were starting to begin to feel the burnout, was that purely an internal hard season or was it
Mm.
exacerbated by like external hard things with like an economy or shifts in a business or anything like that where it was like, oh, we need all hands on deck more than ever. I'm not
Yeah.
asking you to like we'll get more into the business side later, but I'm
Yeah,
just
yeah.
wondering if it was like a hard season
Mm.
externally triggered an internal hard one or only internal or vice versa.
Yeah. I think it's definitely was like a combo. I think what's interesting is that the I lovingly refer to this period of my life as the Great Breakdown,
Oh,
and
nice.
I like to just kind of name things, and I'm like, I don't know, it just felt so significant, and it truly was like before and after, and so even my friends will be like, was this before the Great Breakdown? Like, no. I'm like, oh, this was after. It's like, oh, okay, got it. And there was like a marked before version of me versus an after. And
Yeah.
what was happening, and it was actually about approaching 3 years in March when it kind of started. And so we were relaunching our website from like the Tonic website, like completely rebuilding it. We had a collection in the process, our spring collection. Not only were we like re redesigning and redeveloping our entire website and shop and everything, we were also sort of like freshening the brand, getting new brand images. And so I, being the overachiever that I am and being the photographer, like the retired photographer that I am, I was like, okay, we got to
Yeah.
turn up and turn out on this. And we hadn't done photos for our brand since like the very beginning. And
Mm,
so it was kind of like, okay, we need this thing. And we were really trying to like do some really interesting things with marketing and with product. And then like we're kind of relaunching our image. And so I was like, let's go. And so I got super into it. And part of it was because it was something that I loved. I love producing photo shoots. That's what I used to do.
yeah.
And so I'm like, we did 2 days. We fly to Denver. We work with Jordan Quinn Smith, and we get this studio, and we rent out the rooftop at the Thompson Hotel, and we get this house in Boulder and models, and
Cool.
I style everything, and we bring like the wardrobe, and then we bring in like a prop stylist to help with the this and that, and we ordered books for whatever version of flat lays we were doing 3 years ago,
Yeah. Right.
and all these tech scenes and all of this stuff. And so I was just really like going all in. And I remember feeling like, what am I doing? Like, this is too much. Like, there's so much going on. I was like, yeah, but it has to happen. And that kind of like, I honestly like don't know how like performers do this, stage performers, live performers, where the show must go on. But that's kind of like, I think it's almost like a similar thing where I was like, I don't know, I just got to do it. And so that was kind of like the pressure cooker that was happening. And then I basically get back from Colorado, and it was the next day I was in a meeting with our team, and we were talking about launch, and
Mm.
I hadn't even caught my breath yet.
Yes.
And then and I'm still like kind of like hyped and also like exhausted, and then it's, oh, there's this thing that has to happen now, and I'm done. And it's a big thing that has to happen. And I literally had like the one of the first full-blown panic attacks I've had. So my body was like, my brain shut down. Like that was the like, the alarm bell going off.
Hmm.
And I was like, whoa, but I'm a superhero. I can do this.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I think there's something really interesting that's coming up for me of like, it's so fascinating that an event being the photo shoot where you had to show up and be seen is the thing that really started to kind of,
Mm.
the perfectionism took over, and the both and of our perfectionism and our excellence living side by side, and how you can let go of perfectionism and still keep excellence. Like, that's something I fight for a lot in my own life, is like, no, I'm not being a perfectionist. That's just my excellence. And then I know when I'm actually just being a perfectionist. And so I think there's just something really fascinating of like, when we chase it all the way back, what was the first domino to fall? It was a time, maybe in the first time in a few years, you said it'd been a while since you'd had even the previous photos done, where you had to be seen. And so I don't know if that's, you want to riff on that for a second. Anything coming up for you there of like showing up to be seen,
Hmm.
made it feel like I just used all my energy for that and I don't have it to show up for the next thing.
Yeah, I mean, I hadn't thought about that before. And I do think that there's a piece at play. I think at the time, and even now, um, I had gotten very used to being behind the scenes.
Mm,
That's kind of like how it's set up at Tonic. Is especially like as we've grown, um, and as we've sort of come into our own as people, there's been a like, oh, I'll be back here,
mhm,
and like I'll be off camera, or I'll be, I was operations, like I made this thing run,
yeah,
and I Jen has very much been like the sort of face of the company,
mhm,
especially more so in recent years. And I've kind of like been like, I'm cool back here. And there was a level of what's interesting is like at the photo shoot, like the first day was all about getting the kind of more like stock content that was just like using hands and people and models and all this stuff. And then the second day was for me and Jen, but I was like very concerned about helping her, getting all the shots of her, because it was like, okay, we need these for the newsletter, we need this for this and this and this. And when it came to like me being photographed as part of that, I was like, oh god. And I remember I had like a full freak out, of course, about like my outfit, and it was
yeah.
like the first outfit, and I was like, am I like, why did I think that this was a good idea? I was like full it was too cowboy, Mary. I was like, it was supposed to just be like my pearl snap chambray. And then I have like this wax trucker jacket on. I have like a pair of Tecovas, like Chelsea boots. And I'm like, am I going to the rodeo? Like, what's happening? And then Jen is like very chic. And I'm like, I'm supposed to be in photos with you. And I don't know where I'm going, but like you're
Mm,
going. And so, anyways, I like freak out and I'm like, I'm not, I like, do we have to photograph me? So I do think there
mm,
was some like, oh, okay. Like I don't want to be in these necessarily, but I kind of have to be, or I don't feel as prepared
mm,
for this. Can we just get through it? Can we shine the light over here instead? I think that was definitely at play. And I remember it just coming up like when it actually came time to like step in front of the camera instead of like behind Jordan's shoulders being like, oh no, like what if we did this?
right. That made the shine the spotlight really made my ears perk up because, like, I have this achiever quiz with different types, result types, and one of them is the
Mm,
masquerader who loves to push somebody else into the spotlight because then you don't notice if you sort of like bounce back
yeah.
into the corner. And the thing that was coming up for me when you were describing that whole scene is showing up is a muscle. And if it's been a little while since you've, flexed that muscle or put yourself out there, it is like you're doing it for the first time all over again. Speaking at a conference after it being a couple years or Justin, I would say, is very much like we used to both speak on the stage. And then, the last few years of me launching books, it's been like me doing things, me doing things. And he's like very happy to not have to be the face of things right now. And I think like when we've gone to conferences and things, it's like a muscle you have to learn to work again, and it feels weird and it doesn't work the first, couple of times you try. Okay, so alright, you mentioned some, like, red flags, alarm bells that were going off. Full-blown panic attack's a pretty, big red flag. Your first instinct, the first wave of it was to sort of double down, be who everybody needed you to be, work harder, white knuckle, be the good kid, get the A plus. When did that stop working and what came after that?
Yeah. So this is March, right? And that's what I was like, okay, something's going on here. That this doesn't feel right, but like the show must go on. We have a launch, we have these things. And so I doubled down. I was like, okay, let's do the work. We had a team retreat. We ended up hosting everyone out here in Seattle. We had people on our boat. Like it was this whole thing. I like produced that whole event with the help of my team, but it was like my baby, you know?
Mhm.
And here was like another alarm bell was we had taken everyone out for like the sunset cruise and it was not the vibe. Like it was like windy, it was cold. And so it was just kind of like not and we're on this like rickety dock that really can't hold the boat and it's just this whole thing. And we have 15 people on our boat, which is a lot of people to do and I'm all like in an entertainment mode. And we're trying and somehow I thought we were going to do like a Jen Olmsted level taco night on the boat while we're underway, which
As
you
you do.
know that's a like it's a level and it's like and you know Jen's like what like she just does it and she's so good at it and I'm like okay we'll do that and Jen's there meanwhile and she's helping but we're like on a boat right and there's a kitchen and all this stuff but anyways I just remember like having this moment where I was crouched down in the galley looking for something. And Jacqueline from my team and Jeff from my team was like, you good, bro? And I'm
Mm,
like, no, not good.
wow.
And I was very concerned about the rice and the beans and how, like, literally, how is this going to happen? And I'm like at a max. So there's a little sign where I'm like, no, I'm not, but show must go on. So I stand up. Okay, we're good.
Mm,
And then we kind of fast forward, get through that, and we get into the fall launch world. And if you haven't noticed, like there's this cycle of like things are really intense and then they quiet down and they're really intense. So we got another intense situation, and there was the pressure of how Tonic is around launches um, was just like I could no longer do and I went from being fine to hardly functioning again. I had another panic attack at the sort of realization of how much work there was to be done and how spent I was. And then it became like one after another of these like really, really intense panic attacks to the point where I was like throwing up.
wow.
I'm like completely I'm shaking, I can't breathe, I think I'm gonna die. I'm like, Darren, take me some like I need to go to the hospital.
Yeah.
And so my body was like really loudly telling me at that point, like, this is not working. You can't just double down and grind through this. You can't just continue to keep it pretty because it ain't. And you need to stop. And like hard stop. And I was like, oh, but I love this and it's so fun and I love my team and they need me and Jen needs me and all this stuff and I can't stop and we need money and oh my gosh, I can't stop. And then everyone around me that loved me was like, you need to stop.
Yeah.
And you need to get some help with this. Like this is too like you are not this anxiety is not normal.
Hmm.
This level of panic as a result of like a conversation about logistics is not normal. How you're how you're moving through the world is not you.
Hmm.
And so I felt like I was showing up, I was doing the work, but I wasn't showing up as my full self or even a healthy version of myself. I was showing up as like a really stressed out, burnout, overwhelmed kind of shell of myself that in many ways had become like difficult. Like, you know,
Yeah.
it's like, ooh, like eggshells, like Jeff's kind of on edge, man. And that just started to, like, I started to see that like impact of that. And I was like, okay, this is not the impact I want to be having, especially when it comes to like the people I care about and the things that
Right.
I care about.
Yeah, here's a question that came up for me is, I have in my notes, I just recorded right before this episode with Tanner Olson, who is of the account Written to Speak,
Oh, cool.
fame. He's, wonderful,
Okay.
you would love him. And he talks in his book about believing the lie that, like, his performance and his amount of output was directly tied to how much he could be loved. And I talk about the one who always comes through in slow growth equals strong roots, and this idea of, like, at a certain point, the girl who's afraid to get started becomes the one who always comes through. And
Mm,
how all the people around us start to say things like, "You've got this," like, "Of course you do, you always do. You'll deliver 100% performance, that's just who you are," except that, like, burns in our ears and runs down our throat and sort of raises these questions of,
mm.
like, "Well, what if I don't, though? What if I do disappoint you? What if I can't come through this time?" Like,
Right.
and the big
Will you still
question
love me?
hiding
Yeah.
behind all the others, will you still love me if that's true? And so the thing that came up for me when you were talking is it doesn't even sound like that necessarily was happening there. We'll talk more in a second about disappointing people and whether there was some of that as you started to shift into phase 2 of this. But I almost wonder if it was for you more a grieving of not being seen now as the one who always comes through, of not being known as the one who's always comes through, of now having to be seen as the person who has God forbid, needs, like, to be
Right.
human, to need to rest or whatever. So, like, for was there, like,
Mm,
a grieving of identity of no longer being the one who could roll right out of a photo shoot into a launch, into hosting people on your boat without
yeah.
blinking an eye? And what was that process like?
Yeah. I really do think there was this sort of internal identity crisis happening of like, what yeah, if I can't work, if I can't perform, if I can't dance monkey dance, will anyone be there when I stop? I think it's ultimately a fear of not being loved, but I think there's this image that keeps coming up for me, like in various states, like in therapy, in panic, in anxiety, and the sleepless hours that, I'm trying to fall asleep and I can't. And there's this image of me just like being left alone or like not being chosen. So it's like it's in that lineup, that very classic school sports lineup, and then you're like the one who's not chosen
Yeah.
for the thing. And so I'm like, "Oh, nobody's going to want me unless I have a little jig or unless I bring the homemade guacamole
Mhm.
or I bring the batch cocktail that everyone loves. Like nobody's going to want me in the room unless I show up with something that dazzles them."
Yes. Oh,
And so
that's good.
that was
Mhm.
hitting me of like, "Oh, I've always been reliable. I've always," and there's also this like very unrealistic perception of self that comes in of like this sort of like, well, but I'm the one who always meets the deadlines and who always shows up and is always keeping it pretty and always keeping it strong. Like that's what I thought I needed to be.
Yeah.
And that's what was required in order to like even exist in any of the worlds that I was in.
That's so good. But I totally get that. There's a part in Dirt where I talk about feeling like my achievements have to introduce me into the room, like Dwight Schrute introducing people to the farm. Mr. James Halpert or whatever. That they have to tell
Yes.
that person I'm talking to, not that I'm impressive and that they should be like, swoon or whatever, but that they're not wasting their time spending time with
Mm.
me. That I know something or I can help them in some way, I can, like, give them knowledge or connect them to somebody, that it's that the 15 minutes I'm at their table won't be a waste of time because not because I'm, like, a good person with a funny sense of humor or a good heart or whatever, but no, I have knowledge or connections or experience
Connections,
or
yeah.
yeah,
Insights, breakthroughs, things that would
yeah,
give them something to take away versus just a great hang.
yeah, yeah. So let's talk about you
Mm.
begin to make this pivot into, like, "Oh, I can't show up like I've always shown up. I've gotta come up with a new definition of showing up where I'm showing up for me." And that inevitably I think anytime we start to set good boundaries, or we stop being the one who always comes through, or we stop being the people pleaser, or whatever the case is, that ends up with people, rightfully or wrongfully, being disappointed in some way or another. And so just kind of riff for a second on, hey, when I wasn't the one doing all these things, that meant somebody else did have to, or, oh, I set up these boundaries and it made me realize there were people who could only be friends with me if I didn't have these boundaries, or whatever. Just like navigating the disappointment that inevitably comes when we start to say, I guess what, I'm not superhuman after all.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, one of the main, I guess, I don't know if I wanted, like, if linchpin's the quite word, but like quite the right word, but like one of the major kind of players in that conversation and that realization of, oh, I'm going to disappoint people, or I'm going to put somebody out. Like, that's what I was also like, oh, I am going to require more from somebody else now, was that conversation with Jen, my business partner. Like, hey, I need to take some time to really take a break and to completely sign off. I need to, like, figure out this anxiety, figure out this panic. I need some time to work on myself and to, like, really prioritize my mental health. So this means that, like, I can't do this launch. I can't, I mean, I was canceling trips, speaking engagements, like all sorts of commitments, and like both for Tonic and that other people had asked for.
Yep.
And but I just remember that conversation of being like, Jen, like, I can't be by your side like I have been for the last 12 years. Like, I need to tap out.
And for everybody listening real quick, just to kind of give context, like Jen is also all in and operating at like 100%
Right.
as well. And so, like that's, I guess that like that example is even the perfect one of like, there's always this tension of like, if we're going to offload something, like who's picking it up? That's
Right.
hard. That's hard.
The thing was, is it's not, we had gotten to the place in our business where we had such different roles
Hmm.
that it's not like Jen could do all of my job.
Right.
um
Right.
or that it was like, oh, she'll just take on a few more things. It was like, it's a completely different job, so
Yeah.
she has to do all of her jobs plus my jobs. How's that going to work?
Mm.
And there was that, oh, I'm going to saddle you with my burden.
Right. That's
Which,
that's the that's the phrase of like what most of us struggle with is I'm gonna have
yeah.
to like saddle you with this. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I was like, I don't want to do that to you. I already know you're in a similar workload. If and so I'm going to put that on you. And she was basically like, I just remember her response being like, I got it. Like, we'll figure it out. Like, don't you, like, go get better. We got this. And that was the response from the team too. Cause I was like, hey guys, like, I gotta, take a minute. Actually, I think, Sierra at the time was our integrator, and she and I were working very closely together. Um, and I was COO, she was integrator, and she was basically like, I'll do your job. Like, I will take over these things. We're already doing these things. I will take over the booth at Hybrid. I will take over these things that you were working on, so that it's not suddenly Jen, like, I got it, I have capacity. And then the rest of the team was like, I have capacity, I can do this. Oh, I have capacity, I can
Hmm.
do this.
Wow.
And so they're like, that's what was happening behind the scenes when I was like laid up,
Oh, I
was
got a
the
question.
team. Oh yeah.
Oh, I got a question. I'm so
Yeah.
sorry. Woo!
No, do it.
Woo! Okay, so gosh, that's just such a beautiful example of like how we allow other humans to show up for us when we're willing to
Mm,
say, I don't have this. Just want to let that hang in the air for whoever needs it. But also, we know we as humans really struggle with receiving. So I was at a conference not too long ago speaking at a
mm,
conference, and they had a wall that was like take one, leave one. And it was like on one side, it was supposed to be like things I can help with. And then the other side was like things I need help with, you know?
mm.
And the things I can help with wall was full. And the things I need help with was like, well, one little post-it from like the organizers. And I think that's been a huge part of who I've been trying to become the last few years. That's not even a good way of saying it. That's the unraveling work I need to do and continue to need to do to become that person eventually, of like being okay receiving instead of always the one who's, I'm so competent, I'm so reliable, I'm so whatever. And so how did that feel? Did that, in that moment, did it, honesty hour, did it feel good? Like, could you hold the both and of this is so beautiful and also I don't want to have to be the one who needs help?
Yeah, I mean, I think at the time I was so like just so desperate for really for a relief. And
Yeah.
so I remember feeling so grateful when people stepped up in various ways,
Yeah.
and and allowing even like my little babies, my projects go to somebody else, and to kind of receive that as love and as care, um not just as like, oh sure, whatever you say boss, but like, and I just remember being very like very moved by the gestures.
Yeah.
And it's interesting, I think even when you said like just a minute ago about like, the version of yourself you want to become and the unraveling, it's like I look back on that, and so that's 2 years ago and some change of that moment of really passing the load to somebody else, to a lot of different people, and to now. And man, I am still, I think it's like almost a daily thing, that struggle of asking, well, first of all, it's admitting to myself that I need help, that I need somebody else to show up, to carry this load with me. I'm just reminded of this. It always kind of gives me like the chills, or the goosies, as J Lo calls it. I'm reminded of this phrase that my like friend and mentor Michelle Mulquay talked to, like she had used in one of her chapel talks when I was back at school at Westmont. And at the time, I had, I think I had graduated, but I had worked with her. She was like one of the favorite people I'd worked with, still to this day. And she used the word collaborative expedition. And she was basically just talking about like life is like, and how she approaches life, especially with like people she cares about, is like, this is a collaborative expedition. I'm here with you.
Mm.
So if you need me to like carry this thing for a minute, like that's good, because like we're in this collaboratively. And so to feel that, like to know that, but then still I have to first admit that I need the help. And then I have to say, hey, community, friend, loved ones, team members, partners, I need help. And like, I was literally wrestling through this yesterday with my therapist. How can I still, and like, this is what's so annoying about it, is that I'm like, wait, I already went through that lesson.
Oh, yes.
I already learn how to ask for help?
Yes. I
And
thought I
so
already learned this. Yeah.
what do you mean I still don't get it? I still
Yeah.
can't pick up the phone and be like, hey, like I'm going through it. I need some
Mm.
help.
Yeah. We
So
repeat the lesson until it is learned. We repeat the lesson
yes.
until it's learned. Why have I
And
haven't learned it
so
yet? Yeah.
yeah, I honestly think like receiving the help, that, I mean, I guess that's the other part of it, right? So we have to like recognize, admit to ourselves that we need it. We have to then ask for it, reach out, get support, and then we have to actually allow it to happen. And I don't know about you, but I struggle, like, especially I know you guys, you and Justin both like love hosting and having people in your
Mhm.
home and creating, um, you know, these vibes and parties and all this stuff.
Yeah.
It's so hard as
So hard.
somebody who is the hostess with the mostess to be like, yes, I would love for you to make me a drink
Right.
in my home where I'm hosting the party. Like, yes, I will sit here and yes, I will take a double Oaxacan, thank you, and be okay being like, yeah, you go ahead. I'm going to sit here
Right.
comfortably while you do that. Like, that is so hard for me. And I think I've had to slowly learn the importance of actually like receiving it and enjoying the help and enjoying the relief that comes from not having to be the one to do it all.
Love that. Love that so much. So phase 1 was sort of like white knuckling, double down, go all in. I can, pull myself up by my bootstraps and I'm me. I can always come through. Hard stop in the middle, sort of turning of the page, like, whoops, all bets are off. Just kidding. What does it look like now in the thick of this phase 2 where showing up for yourself is a lifestyle now? Like, just give us some, like, practical, even if you wanna call it that, examples of, like, guardrails and boundaries and rhythms you've put in place, to not wind up back in that place of super burnout.
Yeah, I love the line about like that you just said about like a lifestyle. It's just like so that
Yeah.
it's recognizing that there's things that I need to bake in to my routine, to my business, to my job that say, hey, like if we get into this zone, it's not great for Jeff. And what's been really helpful is like to sort of uh I was thinking about I did this yesterday and I was just thinking about this. Like take my brain and be like, brain, this is just like my brain needs this. And
Yeah.
it's kind of like taking it away from like me as a person and being like, Jeff's brain and all that it needs and all that it does doesn't do well in this sort of setting. So, one of the things that I've been learning during the great breakdown, during that period of just, oh my gosh, I can hardly function. One of the ways that that showed up for me was like I was not able to drive, which
Wow.
was crazy because I'm like, driving, like, isn't that like a basic thing? But
Mhm.
somehow my brain had told me, like, driving's bad, driving's dangerous. You can't do it. You're not good at it.
Mm.
It's too much stress. You're overstimulated. It's all these things. So I'd be like, yeah, but I need to drive. And so every time I would, it would be like this whole thing. I get super anxious. And I would have like even when I was living in Seattle at the time, I was like in an intensive therapy, kind of like a treatment program for anxiety and panic attacks. And I was literally driving to therapy and came into therapy in a panic state, which was like my therapist was like, here we go. Like this is active. You're gonna learn. We're gonna get you through this. And so that was very much happening for me. And I think what was so helpful was to learn there was this skill in dialectical behavioral therapy, which is just like a modality that a lot of therapists use for various things for different like mental health conditions. But she was like, one of the tools is like to check the facts. And so she
Mm.
was like, okay, so how many times have you successfully driven with, and like, okay, like that's a lot of times. And then she also asked me, what are you most afraid of? And made me drill back, like, are you afraid of dying? Are you afraid of hurting somebody? Are you afraid
Mm.
of ruining your car? Are you afraid of, and so like drilling back. And what I was most afraid of ultimately came down to, I'm most afraid of calling my husband and telling him that I got in a car accident.
Hmm.
And what did that have to do with? That's like image. And so what's that? What am I actually avoiding is the shame. Like I don't want to feel shame
Wow.
because I
Wow.
don't want to feel like, oh, like somehow if I get in a car accident, I'm an idiot. I missed something. I made a mistake.
Mm.
And so what I was most afraid of was feeling shame in front of somebody that I loved. it wasn't actually that I thought that I would crash, because like statistically, like she was like, how many times have you driven? Like thousands, tens of thousands. And so that helped my brain go, oh, you're kind of doing this thing that like isn't quite right. So check it. And then again, kind of that idea of like detaching and being like, my brain needs this. And so here's what I can do to kind of help that. Like, okay, let's check those facts, but also driving is hard. I do get overstimulated. I
Yeah.
don't love driving at night in the rain when I can't see. I have a fear of not being able to see.
Mm.
Okay, so what can I do about that? I have a car that has all of these sensors and all of these spidey senses that
Right.
makes me feel better because I know it'll stay in the lane even if I can't see. So there's like that kind of guardrail is like, okay, here's this tool. Or like there's one of the things I've also realized with like stimulation, I get like have some level of neurodivergence, don't know what it is yet. Um it's the constant looking.
Mm.
Um where if I if I'm in a situation where, for example, if I go to the grocery store, I'm having to make a lot of decisions and it's very chaotic. There's a lot of sound, there's a lot of things to see. And so what I'm learning, I just did it the other week to try, is I like listen to music and put my headphones in. Oh my gosh, it made like all the difference in the world. So it's just like taking these kind of little things and being like, Jeff's brain doesn't like that. I get into this heightened anxious panic state. My I'm in that kind of fight or flight mode, and my executive functioning now is compromised. So if I'm like, imagine like if I'm constantly in that state, which I realized I was, how little function I actually have. And that actually kind of made me feel better because I was like, wow, I've been outputting this amazing body of work and checking all of these boxes from a place of like diminished capacity.
Survival mode. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what would happen if I change that? So now it's like it is that both and. It's saying, hey, yeah, I could probably do that. And the people pleaser in me says, yes, I will do that. And I will do it now. Then the like wise mind part of me, which is another DBT thing I learned, would say, oh, like, nope, I need 3 or 4 days to do that. I need to get into my thing. I need to put these boundaries up around my workspace. I need to get in the zone. I need to create an environment where I can produce at this level.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm picturing your brain thinking it is A, simultaneously being chased by a saber-toothed tiger, and B, being like, hold on, I need to put the finishing touches on this website. You know,
Yes.
that's how
And
most of us are
you're
living our
yeah,
lives.
yeah. And you're just really you're like, hey, listen, I'm just trying to align pixels here.
Yeah.
And then you have this creature who's gonna eat you. And you're like, what?
Okay, so now I wanna start to, like, pivot into, we've talked about leading yourself and showing up yourself and for yourself in hard seasons. Now I wanna talk about that from a place, as you as a business, as Tonic, and how Tonic has navigated some hard seasons, at the last, somewhere between, 6 months and 6 years. Who knows? We have no
I know.
idea where it begins and where it ends. And so one of the things I've always so respected and appreciated and, like, silently given thanks to Tonic
Mm,
for is this willingness to lead with vulnerability. I feel like right now, I was joking to Justin the other day that like Instagram is like the storefront for most businesses, and Threads is like the back room where they tell you how it's really going, And so like on Instagram, it's like, oh, just like flying to Italy or whatever, and booking $20 million in one day, whatever. And then Threads is like, why is nobody booking and my business is burning down or whatever. And Tonic leads with such integrity in that for a long time now, y'all have shown up in the emails, the hashtag long and weird signature emails that you send, being totally willing to say, oh, this launch we just did not go the way we thought it was going to. Or like, oh, 2025, anybody else, like hashtag economy, whatever. And you not only just raise your hand and go first and let because here's the thing, you serve creative entrepreneurs. So you're letting every
mhm.
other person in your audience exhale and go, okay, whew, it's not just me. You're not just saying, raising your hand and saying, this is hard. You're saying, and here's what we're doing about it. And here's what we're internally doing, and maybe you can learn from it as well. And so I guess just right off the bat, was transparency like that always a value baked into Tonic from the very beginning? Was it something you stumbled into as things got hard where maybe they'd not been hard before? I guess just maybe even talk about like making the choice to be
Yeah.
willing to go first.
Yeah. I think it's something that was important for both of us, like as individuals. I think we we both value like transparency and honesty and I think like authenticity. And so I remember even when I was a photographer, that was just something super important to me. And that I like looked for as like a quality and as a way that I kind of like move through the world. Um, and so I think that it was kind of baked into like behind the scenes, probably more. I think there was, so we started in 2013.
Wow.
And so it's been a minute.
Yeah.
And I
That
do
went
think,
fast. Woo.
yeah, oh God, so fast, so easy too, just been a cakewalk the whole time. I think there was like I mean, you remember the world of blogging kind of back then, and everyone blogged everything, and we're blogging every wedding and every thought we have, and it's kind
Yeah.
of that was kind of the culture in especially in the photography space for so long,
Yeah.
and I think um we were kind of holding that and then being like, yeah, but like we're selling websites, website templates. Like we everything was a little bit like shrouded in mystery too. We were laughing at like Jen had pulled up one of our first homepage in a talk that she gave at the Show at Spark conference. And it was just all vibes. That's it. Like it wasn't like we're a website company. We didn't want to use the word template. We didn't want to like, and you probably remember it. It was just like cool
Yeah,
vibes
totally.
and this like apothecary label. And we're just
Yes.
like Tonic, sites on tap. What does that mean? Like we were very like shrouded in mystery. So I think for a while we were kind of being like, we didn't know how to show up like as a company or
Mm,
as like a digital product company. And we were like, we're not a personal brand because we're two people and we kind of had this vision of like it becoming a team. And so how do so I think we were struggling with that. And I think the decision, I remember like Jen being like head of marketing and our like resident brilliant writer, she was like, I'm kind of hating marketing. I'm hating like marketing as it is, or I'm just not really finding myself excited. Like, what if I kind of did it in my way? And so that's where like her long and weird email newsletter series started was I'm gonna just write a story that happened and then I'm gonna connect it to what we're learning or what we're trying in marketing or I'm just going to write the story and see what insights come from it. And so I think the more that Jen started to show up in that way, then the more people are like, this is brilliant, this is so great,
yeah,
like thank you, this is the email I want to read, this is so interesting because you're talking about marketing from like a very honest place and you're also using story and good writing to hook people, and people just responded to that. So I think then, and this is where I'm terrible at rapid fire, to say like where we then took it to like the team and started to be like, hey, like we don't know about this, or like what do you guys think? So
yeah.
there's the transparency in the team to have a conversation about when things don't work or when maybe that was a bad idea, and admitting that like, okay, that didn't work, but what do we do next? And allowing that conversation into the culture, like with the team, instead of only like public facing, like it's not performative transparency. It like was actually happening behind the scenes as well.
I love that, and there's something so beautiful about what you just said, and it's been a recurring theme of all 3 episodes that I have recorded today, which is that when you actually show up as you, it suddenly gets easier. It suddenly works. And like, oh gosh, shocker, people were actually craving that. And like, that's the tension. 99.9% of people listening right now know they have a post they want to go put up, know they want to start, a podcast or start showing up online or write a book or whatever it is, or even just like start showing up in their emails, whatever it is. But they're completely frozen overthinking what is the perfect version of this first one I put up. And the reality is that's actually gonna be the downfall, right? Going back to the earlier when you were like, we were saying, like, ironically, when you had to show up and be seen, that's when that sort of, like, kicked off all of this, like, all of the stuff that came bubbling up. Like, that's bubbling up for people who are listening right now, and what I hope that they hear from this episode and the other ones that are coming out around this time is, like, we actually just want you to show up as you. Like, we don't want you to
Mm-hmm.
show up perfect. Nobody benefits from your perfect. We don't learn from it. We're not asking for it. We don't feel seen by it. We just want you. And that's what works. And so
Yeah.
I want to read just a little excerpt of a recent email that you guys sent talking about clean out the fridge.
Mm-hmm.
In a recent email, you said, it's much harder to start 2026 fresh when your business fridge is still full of 2025's fermented leftovers. So this week, we've been cleaning out that metaphorical fridge too. We've pulled every number from 2025 to determine exactly what worked and what didn't, what moved the needle, and what almost moved us to an early grave. Every dollar we invested on payroll, ads, sponsorship, swag, travel, contractor software subscriptions we forgot we had, and more. We looked at the products that generated the most revenue, the campaigns that actually worked, the launches that flopped, our best and worst days, weeks, and months of the past year. We didn't just rearrange the condiments, we got deep into the back of the fridge with bleach and confronted the things we'd been ignoring. And so, just in a like super practical way, because that's such a I mean, there are some practical things listed there, but it's such a fun metaphor of cleaning the fridge out. Like, what does that look like? Like, what numbers are you pulling up? What numbers do you recommend the creative entrepreneur business owners listening? What do you recommend that they look at to do a similar, before we go too much further into 2026, 2025 audit?
Yeah. It is such a great metaphor. I think it's something we have to do often. And that was kind of like Jen's point. It's like sometimes we just neglect it and then it becomes this fermented sludge in the back.
Right.
And so I think like having one of the things actually that we've started doing more because we kind of let it go to the wayside is just having like routine scheduled check-ins about specific things. And so one of the like meeting structure adjustments that Sierra just made was around like having like a monthly recap um, at the end of each month and actually as a team looking at the numbers, like looking at which products sold, where revenue was, where expenses were. That was one thing that we did actually recently is we kind of pulled back the veil on actual numbers, like the actual books, and we're including our team and like this is like where we're spending this money, is this working? And so then you have every team member sort of looking at, okay, so we spent a lot of money on that and that didn't work. Okay, so what do we need to adjust? And even looking at products, we've spent a lot of time on matching products for our websites. And but what it became is like such a huge lift because not only were we launching like a website, but then we're having to launch like 5 or 6 matching products at the same time to round out the suite. And then we actually looked at the numbers and those, it just like as Sierra always says, the juice isn't worth the squeeze. Like it took so much juicing and so much energy and it yielded such little results as compared to these signature products, which are websites. So even it's like looking at, okay, how do we reapproach this thing because the numbers are saying this. So I think it's like looking at actual product numbers. One of the other things too that we always look at kind of before we started doing like a one of our previous team members, he called it like pre-mortem and a post-mortem, which I
Mhm.
think has something to do with death. I mean, you probably know.
Yeah.
Isn't mortem like, yeah. So
Yeah.
it's kind of like, yeah, that's kind of what it feels like. But the idea is like looking at like what really like didn't work,
Yeah.
and we look at that and say, okay, even in the process, like, man, we got to get these things to Ryan for SEO here so he has enough time to do that. Or, man, if we don't have enough time to percolate on those things, then like the design's not as tight, so we need to have it delivered by here. Or even the internal processes, I think, are kind of in that fridge of business, right? Like they go together in terms of actually having a product to deliver.
Yeah, and what that brings up for me, I talk about this in Underestimated, is this is really hard for a lot of creative entrepreneurs because data feels like the enemy. Data feels like just
Mm-hmm.
like hard, like there's the proof I did fail. You know what I mean? And so it's taken me a long time to start to make peace with data. And I feel like keeping in our theme of this episode, it's like data to me feels like being exposed. It feels like showing up and being seen in a way I don't want to be seen. I'm not ready to be seen yet. It tells me that if I have too many eyes on something or not enough eyes on something, both of them are scary, you know? And it's just sort of like there's the version I can tell myself of like, no, no, like there are things happening, there's activity, it feels good, I'm busy, so it must be working, versus the cold, hard facts of the numbers are neutral. They're not trying to have an opinion, they're just telling you what is,
Mm-hmm.
you know? And I don't like
Hmm.
them for that.
No, they're
Lie to me,
so
numbers, lie.
they're so direct and they're rude.
I know.
It's
So
very
rude.
much, yeah, the numbers don't lie, and they often point to things that I think we don't want to admit, or we don't want to like. There's
Yeah.
this website that we all love, and it's like probably one of my favorite websites of like all time because it's like more in my style,
Mm.
and Bijou, and she just never sold. And I was like,
Interesting.
why?
Yeah.
And like you look at it and you're like, okay, this is, if you think of it like very objectively, like I don't think we think of digital storefronts as being as space limited as they probably should be, because like, oh, you can just put all these products, there's pages. But if you think of like real estate at an end cap in a grocery store
Mm.
is very coveted, right? And there's this whole thing about what gets to go there and why. And so
Hmm.
it's like, why are we clogging up key space with something that isn't resonating? And like, yes, it's beautiful and yes, it's good, we can stand behind it, but that doesn't mean it has to stay. Like
Yeah.
sometimes the good thing has to go. And I'm sitting here like looking out at I just had this like thought of like, I'm looking at this tree, and I have this thing about trees, Mary, like it's a little crazy. I both want all dead branches or dead leaves to be gone at all times.
Okay.
So that's unrealistic. And I have a really hard time cutting or pruning because I'm like, oh, it looks so pretty right now. Why would I
Wow.
like lob off this branch? And I
Yeah.
think like to kind of go into like a different metaphor, it's like in order for like, I know this about trees because Aaron taught me this, Jen's husband. Like there's like the sucker things they're called at the bottom that will grow out of the base. And then
Okay.
like the tree then is putting energy into those. But
Right.
like what you want it to do is put energy into the canopy,
Hmm.
into the trunk, into the bigger thing. So you prune it so that, and you cut away those suckers because they're sucking life out of the tree to the wrong thing, and you put it. And so that's kind of what even like editing down looks like, and being like, hey, that product didn't work, but we need to replace it with a better product, or we need to put the spotlight, the tree, or the light needs to get to our signature products, and Bijou wasn't that. And so saying goodbye like was really hard.
Yeah. Killing, like there's a reason they call it killing your darlings. It's so
Yes.
dramatic, you know? It's like
My
picture saying,
baby.
darling, I love you. You
Yes.
know, it's gonna kill it.
Yeah.
Okay, I want to continue reading from that excerpt. You guys go on to say the results were blinding fridge light in the middle of the night illuminating. Also, incredibly annoying because when we actually looked closely at the numbers, there was clearly something leaking down the back of the fridge. Over and over again, high effort projects with low impact returns, projects we'd slaved over, stressed about, lost sleep over, that didn't move the needle in our businesses like we'd hoped. Projects, collaborations, and products we probably wouldn't have even deemed a failure until confronted with the cold, hard data. Exactly. It was
Mm-hmm.
maddening, honestly, having to face the freezer burn fact that several of the big projects we stressed over, invested in, and put our whole heart and team into last year actually only contributed a tiny percentage to our actual revenue, when we could have spent that time, effort, and money doing more of what actually worked. We call it leak. The rogue Ziploc of forgotten spinach that never quite got closed. The sneaky thing, most of the time we made just enough money on the leak that it actually felt like a small win at the time. But looking at it in the context of what really worked, it was actually a loss. Basically, what I'm saying is, thank goodness we cleaned out the fridge. And then you guys go on to describe and explain a graph that Jen's brother sent over called the impact effort graph, that reveals that it's not just high effort, low impact things that have to go in our business, but the sneaky, low effort, low impact ones as well. And so just spend a little time riffing on the sneaky leaks in business, the low impact, low effort, low impact, but it's still, oh, we didn't work that hard on it. So maybe it's still okay, that are actually
Mm.
stealing us away and leading us to burnout instead of letting the canopy grow.
Yeah, I think. I mean, there's a whole number of like sneaky things I think that come in to mind like over the years and even right now. I think just like speaking from my like some of like the projects that like I remember working on so passionately. Like there was this we had last year I had worked on a like designer program, and it was we wanted it to be like this really cool high end kind of concierge to refer designers to. And I spent all this time like talking to different designers and curating a great group, and I wanted it to be kind of like, the little black book of Tonic,
Yep.
of like preferred vendors. And I was like, okay, this isn't the first time anyone's done this. This, like Style Me Pretty did this for years. Like
Right.
surely this would work. And so I spent all of this time on it, and it just didn't. It was something that the price point was not where like most of the people who were asking us for a referral could afford. It was just like they were spending so much money on Tonic side and then hiring a designer, and then just like the relationship wasn't really working. And I just remember being like, oh my gosh, but I spent all this time, we told these people we're going to do all this, we had all this buy-in and blah blah blah, and it was going to generate revenue because it was a paid membership and all of this stuff, and it was this bid to solve all these problems, and it just didn't. And that was really hard for me because I was like, oh, I invested in this. And so I think that was one of those things, was like it actually was quite a bit of work, but like relatively not as much as building a website or overhauling a whole new system. But that it just we looked at the numbers, and it's like we weren't even getting any nibbles on this.
Hmm.
Okay, we just done, you know?
Yeah.
And so that was one example last year. And then I think again on some of these products is like we had this idea that like, oh my gosh, everyone needs pricing guides and pricing menus, and they need to send out this like big PDF. And they also need like matching this and matching that. And so, and I guess one of the bigger ones was email. We are like, oh, they want these individual email cards. We need horizontal. We need banners. We need headers. And so we did that for so many products, and then spent hours and hours and hours on it. And again, not like a ton of like hard work, just like arduous, not difficult, but just time consuming is what I'm trying to say, and fairly low lift for any individual to do, can do it kind of mindlessly, and it still just like didn't even pay for those hours used,
Mm. Oh,
you
that's the
know
worst.
and
That's
you're
the
just like,
worst.
or you're like again, it's kind of clogging up the system that like, okay, sure, we made a little money, but like it's bringing us over here.
Yeah, you know what's wild about that too, though, is, like, that fear is one of the biggest fears that I, talk about and underestimated that keeps people stuck is, like, what if all of this is a waste of time? What if I spend all this time doing this and then it doesn't pay off? And the fact of the matter is sometimes you will. Sometimes you absolutely will, and it's 100% normal, and it's part of the process,
Yes.
but it may
Wasting
bring you to the thing
yeah.
that does work. Yeah, sorry, go.
And no, I have such a hard time like wasting time and
Yeah.
wasting money. Like I beat
Mhm.
myself up. Like I spent all of this time and I hold like Jen has to like pry things from my fingers sometimes. Like
Yeah.
Jeff, yes, I know that you worked on that and so did I, but like it's not working, let it go. And I have a harder time because again, like I'm so efficiency minded. And that's one thing that like Jen as a designer understands at the core of creative work is iteration.
Yes.
And you have to be willing to like scrap it and delete it. You have to be willing to go all the way through this messy, twisty, mucky process to maybe arrive on that thing that actually had looks nothing like where you started, but it was that wandering that got you to that idea that became that $1 million idea. And so that's what's so like it's so frustrating for me and my brain when I am fighting against efficiency and productivity and look at what like I need to show you what I made, and if I don't have anything to show you, if I have to delete it, then I'm a failure. So I'm very, I'm precious about that.
Yeah, same, same. I love that word iteration that you brought up. It leads me into my next question, which is, sort of this, like even though you've already said in this conversation that websites are definitely still the signature offering and the ones that the impact matches the, output and the results or what have you. But I watched you guys through the emails be surprised by an iteration of just the fact that people were craving your it was almost like an afterthought the first time it was thrown in, the Canva social media packs.
Hmm.
And it sort of reminds me I don't know that this is the exact case in this example, but it reminds me of that quote that's like, "Don't throw away your scraps." Kind of an idea or like
Mm.
that's like the idea of like B-roll or like when you're cutting a film in the film room,
Hmm.
like these little scenes that you aren't using in this book, Mary, you might use in book 2 or like this, iteration that you thought was like, "Oh, that's not gonna be a website," but then it's like, "Oh, that would actually be really perfect for a
Mm.
speaking pack or for Canva graphics," or whatever the case may be, and just letting go of this one thing you think you are, we are a website company, and being open to showing up and having conversations with your customers about what they would also love to have from you. Like, feel like I remember an email where y'all had to process through, like, "Wait a minute, are we a Canva pack company? I don't" that's like an identity thing. So, maybe just talk about that of, like, um, showing up and not being defined by the one thing you thought you were.
Yeah. I definitely remember it being this wrestle internally, and then I think that's one of the
Yeah.
things we started experimenting with is like let's take that external and say, hey, we're struggling with this. And our I remember we went to Craft and Commerce that Kit puts on a couple years ago, and I know that Nathan Barry, the CEO there, was very one of the things he just kept saying was like creating in public. And I'm just like, ain't nobody want to see that. And so doing a little bit more of that, being like, hey, what should we name this thing? Or do you guys like this idea? So yeah. And I remember my brain, my little brain over there, and me as a person is like, okay, but we're Tonic Site Shop. So wait, now we have this thing. How do we need to rebrand and rename? And some of it was like, yeah, we're fundamentally a site shop, but we still have these other things because people are asking for them. And so then it was like, okay, well, how do we do this in a Tonic way and in a way that feels aligned? And so we tried a lot of, we tried like we did one release years ago, and then it was like people kind of wanted matching ones, and then that
Mhm.
worked really well, but now people need more than matching. And so just now we decided just actually we launched yesterday. I was like, what day is
Mhm.
it?
Yeah.
We launched a new collection called Prosecco,
Yep.
and it's just like kind of what's happening right now, and it's meant to be this like drop you can grab, you can customize. Maybe you're using 5 to 10 of them, maybe you're using all 50, whatever you need. But it's this idea of like trying to play with like something that's more current and like needed tomorrow, you know? And so it's like listening to the market, um and being willing to play and experiment with different things, but also I think where we got a little bit wild, yes, last year, even the year before, was like we kind of went too far and we're like, oh, let's do all these things. And it's like, okay. And so it's just knowing that like, yeah, maybe that didn't work. Let's rein it in. Let's clean out the fridge. Let's, pare it down a little bit. But again, not being afraid to try things
Yeah.
that maybe are outside of our box or are outside of our normal. And people have responded really well to
Yeah.
those things.
Yeah, one of the things that's coming up for me as you're describing that, and this has been a theme in a lot of different ways through this episode that I just really want to underscore for somebody listening is, and maybe that someone is me, is that initial failure is feedback, right? Like we hear that it sounds like such a great tagline. Oh, okay, failure is feedback. That's fine. So many of us, myself included, are wired that if something doesn't go to take off like gangbusters the very first second, then it's like, I'm a failure. This is embarrassing. Shame. Hide away. Forget it. Sorry, guys. Sorry I bothered you. And what I love that you're articulating over and over is like, we put this out there. We measured it. It wasn't what we wanted. So we pivoted. We did a different
Mm.
version of that. It was working. So we did more. More was not working. So we brought it back down to where it was. Like, just removing it being a personal attack when you're looking at the results and saying, okay, we learn from this and we pivot and we move forward and we try again. It's like that drafts upon drafts upon drafts. You get as many
Mm-hmm.
drafts as you want kind of thing. So I just want somebody listening right now to like hear a business owner articulating their way through, yep, that worked and that didn't work and that never sold. And I don't know why, without it feeling like punch to the gut, my life is over,
Mm-hmm.
personal attack. It's just facts. And then it's just data. And we learn from the data and we pivot. And I'm so thankful for that as like a running theme. I just wanted to underscore that. Talking about Prosecco, one of the things that I've loved about just hearing the sort of new thought process for dropping the Canva packs on a macro level is this idea of we're going to drop a new pack every time we see a shift in the market in the social what's working on social media right now. So being like very agile and very like showing up and tuned into what's working, dropping, adapting, and that's probably going to change by a month or two from now. And so that's like the macro level of like the theory behind these new packs is like we're going to, maybe quarterly-ish drop new packs and it's going to have the latest, here's what's working now. With Prosecco in particular, one of the things Jen said is that she was like talking about a bunch of different movies she loved and how what worked in each of those movies is that it was just people writing their letters. It was just people writing like from the daily life of from my viewpoint,
Mm.
from my front porch, this is what life looks like right now. And so this Prosecco pack in particular was designed with that in mind to be able to say, like, here's some favorite things I'm loving. Here's something I'm noticing. Here's, what life feels like. She goes through a few different things, what you're thinking about, not just working on, a moment this week that felt too small to mention, but somehow meant everything, the opinion you hold that goes against the grain in your industry, a conversation that shifted you, a book that's making you smile, customer service moment that took a weird turn, why you chose the color palette and what it reminded you of from childhood.
Mm.
And so just use that conversation of what you're doing with the Canva packs, what you're doing with Prosecco this round in particular, and riff for a little while about what you see really breaking through social media because, ooh, buddy, has it gotten bad out there? What is going on?
Hmm.
Yeah, that's my question. Solve it all.
Yes. Ready to go. Well, as the
Yeah.
like non-marketing expert at Tonic, that's what's always kind of funny because I'm like, yeah, like what is happening? We have this thing that Jen's sort of now famous, I guess contributor, unofficial contributor to the newsletter is her little brother Jonathan, and she always says like my little brother. I think it's so cute.
Yeah.
Anything Jonathan had told us this, put us onto this idea of having the bad idea of the day,
Mm,
and it's just throwing out these ideas that could potentially like there's not a lot of thought around them. They could be bad, they could be great. Like, but what if one of those bad ideas is that great thing? And so they're
yeah.
just being that ability to like play and experiment. So that's kind of what I saw the team doing, like on this particular product, and in the context of, okay, what's happening on social media? Like, we're seeing lots of just bummer stuff,
Yeah.
and the world is heavy right now, and there's just so much going on that's like not great, and we're struggling with how to promote things. Everything feels like I don't know, this is something that I struggle with, like with my own content, is like, where do I start? Or I haven't said anything for so long, or like now I
Yes.
have things to say about things I care about, but then I'm a this or that, or I was posting about, you know, a cocktail last week. What do I do now? And so just
Yeah.
having some tools where it's like, I don't know, I saw this cool thing. I'm going to just post up about that because I don't know what else to do. And it's just like a way for people to grab something. And I think more and more people, like, kind of the through line, people are craving intimacy and transparency and behind the scenes. And we know that, like, the super polished, like edited videos, like people like the handheld, they like some, and so it's like, and they just like, people are responding to stories and like points of connection. And so any, like, that's, to me, that's kind of always been the thing with like personal, especially with personal brands, is like, how can you create a point of connection that starts conversation? And so that's one thing that, like, we just try to give tools for people, like, kind of, if it's on your website or if it's in your social media, as your web presence, how can you connect with people? That will always be kind of like a tenet, I think, of marketing,
Yeah.
especially like right now, right? And I don't want to say always, what do I know? But like, I think that's like a through line, right? And
Yeah.
so, and especially right now, people want to connect with people. And so I think anything that we can do to make that easier is what we keep trying to create for people. Like, oh, you need a way to show this. Okay, we got you. And I would say probably more than ever, if not more than a long time, like a lot of what was put into it was requested. Like, hey, we need a thing for this, or it's like, it's based on current and years of feedback of like what people are asking for. Like, I need a template for this thing.
Yeah, I love that. And the whole, like, as you were describing that, the phrase that was jumping into my mind is this idea of kind of like a back to basics, like in a world
Mm-hmm.
where it's got polished. And so, the Cohen brothers come in and direct your Instagram videos or whatever,
Yeah.
it feels like, okay, unless I have a whole team following me, like Real Housewives
Yes.
style, like
Yeah.
up or whatever. It almost feels like what people are craving is just like a return to basics. And before we hopped on this call, you had said it's kind of a return to what we love. It's a return to like why we
Mm,
started in the first place. And that this
yeah.
whole journey of things getting hard and you realizing you couldn't keep like white knuckling and pushing through, when you pare away and prune away, you get back to just like what is essential, what is necessary, what is true, what is good, what feels like love. And so,
Mm,
building off of that, you guys are doing something that you say feels like a return to basics for you, which is something called Launch Camp. And so, just let everybody know what the heck Launch Camp is, what kinds of things you're going to be talking about, when it is, how they can get signed up for that, and just sort of like, if they have been loving this and they just need more Jeff in their lives, how they can make that their next step.
yeah, definitely think that Launch Camp is, it's like one of my favorite things we've ever done. And it actually started as like a bad idea of the day. Um,
Yes.
and and so anyways, it is, we're kind of doing like, we're like turning the dial up. Historically, it's been like a way for you to like, launch your website, where people get so stuck on
Mm,
the actual doing, and what about copy, and what about images, and well, what about design? I need the color to change. And so it's like kind of guiding people through that. But what we kept doing as we did this over the years was like, we were bringing like an AI expert or a social media expert. And so now there's just like, I mean, I saw the lineup, I was like, this is so great. So there's really cool people who are experts in various components of your online presence, and various, ways where like you could come in kind of no matter where you are and what you're looking to launch next, or maybe you're launching a full new site, or maybe you're just launching a new product or a new course or something, and you just need a way to sort of refamiliarize yourself like how to do that, or maybe it's a new product in general that you've never done a product launch like this before, and so you just want to chat with some people who've done that. So it's very community driven, it's very collaborative, and yeah, so that's kicking off 24th, 25th, and 26th of March. And we'll get a link for you guys in the show notes and everything. But yeah, it's
Yeah.
one of the things that, like, again, we would just want people, like, we want to help people launch the thing that they need to.
Yep.
And you just come in, it's very workshopy. My favorite thing that we started to do, it's so silly because it only lasts for like a few minutes, but we do the breakout rooms on Zoom. And then it's like the sorting hat where it puts you into the rooms, and then you show up and you get to like chat with like strangers on the internet, which is like so fun for
Yes.
me. And I'm like,
That's
which
so
room am I going to be put into? So there's just like ways to connect and like kind of be in it together as creative entrepreneurs and of people who are trying to show up online when it's really hard to. So it's going to be current. It's like, this is our, while we've been doing Launch Camp for a few years now, this is like, again, it's like the pivoted version. It's the current, what's happening, how do we do this now? And it's not this like, oh, we have all the answers, but there's a lot of people in our world who have some great answers that we're bringing in to
love
kind of
that.
show us the ways.
Oh, love that. Well, Jeff, this has been incredible, incredible. I could hang out with you all day, every day. Thank you for coming and just keeping it so real, real on
Oh
what's
my
working, real on
gosh.
what's not, real on the realities of being a business owner in uncertain times.
Yes.
Or even in normal times, let's be
I
honest.
know. Yeah.
Let them know where they can follow you, where they can find more of you, anything else you want them to know. It's tonicsiteshop.com if they want to check out the templates. If you use the code Mary sent me, you can get 20% off during the spring launch, 15% off any other time, depending on when you're
Yeah.
listening to this. But just let them know where they can find you.
Yeah. So you can follow Tonic at Tonic Site Shop on Instagram. My personal account, which, like I just said, has ups and downs of lifestyle content and some entrepreneur content and stuff. There's things I plan on doing, and that's at Jeffrey Shipley.
Yep.
So that's kind of where I'm hanging out online. And yeah, gosh, Mary, thank you so much for
Yeah.
having me and for having a conversation about that kind of messy process of entrepreneurship, and yeah,
Yeah.
just creating a space for me and you for both of us to like talk about this stuff. So it's really
Yeah.
great.
I always have a space for you. Always. Always. And
Well,
a
thank you.
ballroom dance for you as well.
Such good memories.
All right, friends, make sure you get signed up for Launch Camp. We will link that up in the show notes for you. Like I said, you can always use Mary Sent Me at tonicsiteshop.com to get between 15 and 20% off any of your orders, depending on if it's a launch or just a regular day of the week. Make sure you go follow Jeff at Jeffrey Shipley on Instagram and get more of his genius and true tastemaking in your life and real, honest answers in your life. And until next time, friends, this is the Mary Marantz Show, and welcome to your Show Up season.